Hello my lovelies, my name is Miki Dragon and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's lovely to have you here. Happy Valentine's Day! We are going back in time with the Last Aster, and so I decided that I would get a little more period accurate. So, let's get into it. Alrighty, the Last Aster. I'm really excited. This one looks so beautiful just by the art style alone. I'm so excited.
Don't cry. There's nothing to worry about, love. I'll be back before you know it, and in better shape than when I left. I promise.
And you never break your promises?
Never. Besides, I wouldn't be able to leave your smile for too long.
Oh no, is this gonna be sad?
I won't be able to smile much without you around.
There are things in this world that are wonderful and beautiful that you will be able to enjoy without me by your side. So, see everything you want to see and love the way you do best. I want to hear about all these memories when I get back. So, now it's your turn to promise me. Promise me that you'll live your life, Aster.
I promise.
I wasn't expecting this to be fully voice acted. Oh my god. Oh, she's gorgeous. Oh, look at her. Aster's hair blew out of her eyes as she waited for the door to open. Despite seeing the man at least 2 times a week, this time felt different. The trepidation of today's outing was almost too much for the sweet girl to handle. She didn't know if her soul could bear the fleeting moment together. But it was now or never. There would be no other time. Not for a long while. Oh, look at this art style. This is gorgeous. Oh my god.
Don't let him see you so nervous. He'll never let you live it down.
No, he won't. She mumbled a pep talk to herself, but it did little to ease her rampant thoughts. Aster was a mess for the first time in a while. She held her hand-woven basket so tightly in her hands her knuckles grew white. Aster stumbled backwards when the door opened, simultaneously revealing her terrified face and the gorgeous smile of the man she had loved so dearly.
Whoa there! Careful now.
Oh, he's cute. Oh, they're so cute together. Oh god, this is gonna make me so sad. Oh god. Cedar reached out to catch his girlfriend before she could tumble to the ground. He offered her a kind and hesitant smile, one he had reserved only for her when they shared a vulnerable moment together. The air around the couple, Aster noticed quite quickly, was tense and stuffy, unlike the usual light-hearted and fun moments they had shared together quite often. She was expecting the man to make a joke about her clumsiness, but today, he seemed to look at her with a distance in his eyes. Was that all a fragment of her imagination, or had Cedar been overcome by nerves as well?
Sorry,
Her voice trailed off. She didn't know what to say to the man, who had never given the air that he was unsure of himself. If he crumbled, so would she.
Don't apologize. I'm glad you came to see me.
Of course. I wouldn't miss a chance to spend time with you. I've almost all but cleared my schedule for the next 2 days so that we could have a lovely weekend together.
Oh. She lifted the basket slightly. It was covered with a deep green napkin, hiding the contents. She could see the curious look in Cedar's eyes, which made her giggle.
I thought we could start our day with a picnic by the port. I packed your favorite.
Cedar placed a hand on his stomach.
Thank the Lord, I am starving. Leon made deviled eggs for breakfast. I hate the things.
To each their own, but deviled eggs are delicious, dude. He stuck out his tongue and scrunched his nose in disgust. This made Aster smile. He was slowly melting into the man she had grown accustomed to. Good, she had lamented to herself. because if he had remained so stiff the entire time, she would find it hard to hide behind her smile for much longer.
Leon is not your personal chef. You should be happy that your brother makes the time to cook for you.
Half brother.
Even better, he's not obligated to. Aster playfully rolled her eyes. She didn't understand why Cedar always had to emphasize that he and Leon were only half brothers. She quite liked the older man. Though more subdued and certainly more buttoned up than his brother, she found Leon a good companion for his more laid-back sibling. She'd wager money that Cedar felt the same way too.
It makes no difference. I'd love to have someone cook me breakfast, even if it was something I didn't like.
Yeah.
I would like to cook for you,
Same.
but you refuse to let me. Otherwise, I'd cook you whatever you like, love.
Oh, yeah, Aster, let him love you. Come on. The way he had always so effortlessly snuck that nickname into every one of their conversations made Aster swoon. She had relished in being Cedar's one and only. She couldn't imagine standing anywhere but at his side.
That's because you've only ever asked to spend the night so you could wake up with me in the morning. Mother would never approve.
Nope.
A little cuddling always soothes the soul, love. That's all I was offering.
Aster began to blush profusely, thinking of the man's arms around her, snuggling up against each other, but in a way they had never tried before. If things were different, and she had not lived with her parents, Aster would have liked to try it at least once with Cedar.
Well, when you come back, perhaps I can convince my father to let me sleep over at your house?
That would not go very well.
Yeah, and maybe by then I'll be living on my own and not have Leon breathing down my neck like a child.
He cares a lot about you. It's sweet.
It's suffocating. I'm going to enjoy some time away from him. You, however...
He grinned slyly and slinked his arms around the girl's waist. Oh. She eased into his warm embrace almost instantly, shutting her eyes for a brief moment as the two took a step away from Leon's house.
Will you miss me, Cedar?
Of course I will.
What if there's another girl you meet? One who's prettier than me? Who has cute dimples and a captivating smile? Would you still miss me then?
Do you think I could be so easily swayed by another woman? Don't make me laugh.
He leaned in towards the shorter girl to place a messy kiss atop her forehead. She could only laugh at the sensation. In truth, she would miss Cedar more than he could ever miss her. She was sure of it. No other man could fill in for his warmth.
You are the only woman for me, Aster. I will miss you with every breath I take.
I do like to hear you say it so candidly.
She placed a hand over her lips to hide her widening smile.
Yeah, well...
He looked towards the sky as the two walked forward together. Aster didn't bother to look around at the sights. She grew up in Hyacinth and had seen it all before. She much rather watched the man by her side maneuver through the empty streets. He was absolutely breathtaking to her in every single way.
It's not a time to be coy and keep things to myself. If now's not the time to tell you how I feel, then when will be?
Aster could only stare at the man in wonderment as he spoke. She had known something was different about him, and it certainly was his impending shore leave that plagued his brain, same as hers. It was slightly unnerving to see the normally calm, cool, and collected man even slightly rattled. The moment was beginning to feel more and more real. In just a few days, she and Cedar would no longer be walking side by side like this. Their reverie of passion would be put to a halt as he was sent off to join the army. Oh no, please come back alive, Cedar. Please. It was a mandate that Cedar couldn't fight, no matter how hard Aster would have begged him to try. She didn't think she'd be able to convince him otherwise. His heart for justice was too strong. Cedar thought he could change the world. Aster hoped that he could, considering the high price of their happiness was being paid.
I suppose you're right. Well, then I shall let you know that I adore you just as well.
Is that so? How do I know you won't be the one replacing me with some handsome stranger?
Aster didn't feel like entertaining his teasing. She spoke slowly and from her heart.
I don't think I will ever love another man as I have loved you. There will never be anyone to replace you.
Oh.
He stopped walking, Aster following suit. His hand on her waist had grown limp as it dropped to his side. For the first time in the sunlight, she could see the unmistakable pain in his eyes. Her earlier fears were now confirmed. He was worried about their future just as much as she was.
Did I say something wrong?
No. I think I did.
No. He shut his eyes for a moment and then inhaled a sharp breath.
If something happens...
No.
She spoke sharply, shutting down the man's train of thought. If he dies, I'm gonna sob. I don't even know this man. I am too invested in their love for anything to happen.
Nothing is going to happen.
We may have to face the truth, love. Something could happen, and it could be anything.
No.
Maybe I come back a little different than when I left.
That
Then what?
will happen.
Will you still love me like you do now? You may find it hard.
Inside here.
Aster placed a firm index finger against her chest and jabbed it twice.
My heart will always be the same. There is only room for you. And even when you leave, there will still be remnants that no one will be able to clear. Not even you, Cedar.
Cedar's frown turned into a small smile as he listened to the beautiful girl speak so surely of herself.
If you are so certain, I won't argue.
Yes. Now, let's hurry along, please. The food is going to get cold, and there will be no place to warm it up.
I'd eat it anyway, made with love from my special girl.
Oh my god, I love romance.
It won't be as delicious.
I think you underestimate your skills, love. But please, do lead the way because my stomach is beginning to rumble.
This is so wholesome. Oh my god. Laughing at the sound his stomach made, Aster linked her arms with the gruff man's, and the two continued their journey to the port.
Oh, boo.
Aster cried out as Cedar laid the tablecloth the girl brought. She had spent too long a time picking out a color that she was sure Cedar would remember. Blue with green stripes. A fitting pair.
What's wrong, love? Am I doing this wrong?
She hadn't turned around at all to see the man's progress. Her eyes were fixated on the sea as she stood near the railing.
There are no boats at the port today.
There are never any boats anymore. That's nothing new.
Do you remember when we would come out here just to watch the ship sail by? It was so much fun.
Yes, we'd wager on which boat would make it out of you first.
Cedar sat down onto the laid-out tablecloth and patted the empty spot next to him.
Join me, love.
In a moment.
Leaning on the railing in front of her, Aster shut her eyes and let the wind fly through her hair. It felt like almost yesterday when she and Cedar had stood at this very spot, arms intertwined with each other as they watched the boats leave port. Now, it was bare and empty. Not a single ship was at port, and none were in the water floating about. War had changed Hyacinth in more ways than one. What used to be a bustling tourist place with tons of imports coming in and out had turned into an empty shell of itself. Not only was the port eerily quiet, but the streets were just lifeless as well. When she listened closely, all she could hear was the wind. Not the rattling of women's purses as they walked by, or the low rumbling of lovers as they spoke. No children running about and playing tag. Just the occasional footstep here and there. As people moved about their daily lives. War. It was a scary, terrible thing with the power to strip even the liveliest cities of their joy and happiness. Taking a step back from the railing, she peered over her shoulder. Her happiness, too, was being stripped away. Even if just for a little while, war would be taking the man she loved away from her. To avoid concerning Cedar, Aster fought back the tears she only reserved for her pillow, and wore a sad smile instead. Would she be out here one day on her own, looking out at the same empty sea, with the same empty streets beside her, but this time with no loving man by her side? The rustling of the picnic basket broke Aster from her thoughts. She couldn't help but lift her smile when she noticed the man haphazardly digging through the food she had prepared for him. The two locked eyes, and Cedar raised a brow.
Love, I told you I was starving. Come on, before I eat all this by myself.
Aster hugged her arms around herself as the cool, gentle breeze passed over her. Still, she made her way to the man and sat down by his side. Cedar beamed when her knee brushed against his leg.
You're doing it incorrectly. Here, let me help.
Aster took the basket from the man. Most of the contents, however, had already been spread across the blanket in disarray.
Oh dear. First plates and then the food. It should be laid out properly.
Aster placed a paper plate in front of both of her and Cedar. Then she placed the utensils on each side of them. Satisfied with her arrangement, she held her hand out for the container of food. The red and green pasta sloshed about as Cedar handed the clear Tupperware to her.
Is all of this necessary? It smells so good. I can't wait to eat it.
Of course it's necessary. A proper meal sets the tone for the rest of the day. We don't want a mess plaguing us.
It's so nice to see just a different operation of doing things. Like, most people don't go on picnics anymore, and if they do, they've got like sandwiches that they have in little bags. There's no utensils, usually no plates. But so much care is just put into this whole entire endeavor that it's just so sweet. Aster waited a moment for Cedar to call out her superstitious nature, but today he didn't seem to mind. Or maybe he didn't have the heart to argue with luck. Not on a day like this. It was all a foolish mask to hide the fact that she wanted everything to be perfect about this weekend, so that Cedar would always remember it, down to the blanket she used and the placement of the forks. If a perfect goodbye existed, she wanted this to be theirs. A beautiful bow tying their experiences neatly together. A nice ribbon that could be unwrapped later at his return.
No, I suppose we don't want a mess. I can wait a few extra minutes for you. What was that saying? Patience is a virtue?
I say that all the time. I say that all the time.
Yes, a cardinal virtue at that. One of the most important, or so Father says.
Aster uncapped the container and began to gingerly pour the pasta into Cedar's plate first. It was almost silly how she had counted each piece of ziti as it fell from the container, as if an uneven number of pasta would make a big difference. However, the distraction helped ease her breathing as the man beside her talked casually.
Speaking of your father, how is he doing?
Great. Thanks to his newest paper, the Academy has been able to make some breakthroughs about some old documents found in the library archives. Because of that, he's gotten the day off for himself to relax before going back to work tomorrow.
Ah, so that's how you were able to secure your schedule.
Yes, tomorrow will be a little different. I have to take care of Mother, so...
Her voice trailed off with a small frown. Aster's mother was bedridden and had been for a few years. Thanks to her father's wealth, they were able to keep her mother relatively comfortable for her condition. However, every day still proved to be a challenge.
I need to make sure Mother takes her medication. She's been growing more fussy with each day, almost like a child refusing to eat her vegetables.
She's still refusing to take her medication. She knows that the medicine is what keeps her healthy. Why does she refuse to take it?
Healthy is a strong word. You and I both know that, dear.
She's alive and kicking. That's a sign of good health, is it not?
I would have agreed with you last year, but now? Mother is worse for wear. She listens to the radio too much. We tried to tune into the funnies, but she always switches it back to the world news.
If that ain't a punch to the gut. Oh
That
my
grave
god.
stuff isn't something she should be listening to. It's sure to drive her mad.
I fear it already has, which is why I don't think she wants to take her medication any longer. I don't know if she wants to be here anymore.
Oh.
So, Father and I take turns keeping watch over her, if her caretaker is not around.
Well, in that case, let me come over tomorrow.
Let him, please, Aster.
What?
Oh god, this is so sad. Aster stammered, snapping her eyes to the man's porcelain face. His smile gave her a warm and secure feeling throughout her body. She was confused.
Tomorrow's your last day in Hyacinth. Wouldn't you rather we go on a romantic date or something else?
We can. Once your father returns home, it's no big deal to me. I'm actually quite fond of your mother. I'd like to see her before I leave and send her my regards.
I can call her caretaker and tell her to come in a few hours later then.
And don't worry about cooking for me again. This?
He lifted up his empty plate in his hands, nearly licked clean, with a toothy grin.
This was delicious. But let me be a gentleman and spoil you ladies.
That sounds lovely. Just nothing...
Spicy. I know your mother hates spicy food, love.
Right, yes.
Aster's fingers inched towards Cedar's, a slow movement as she watched the sunlight shine onto him. A moment like this, talking to the man she loved about connecting with her family, was something she had always wanted. She had often thought about Cedar sitting at the dinner table with her and her family, a perfect fit. Was that going to be a possibility now? Would he have the chance to be a part of her family? Would she get the chance to be a part of his? Catching sight of the girl's lingering hand, Cedar took the chance to take it and squeeze it lightly.
So tell me, how has work been? Go stomping through anyone else's lawn lately?
Only yours.
She squeezed his hand back, remembering how the two met. Aster was part of Hyacinth's Botanical Preservation Association. The BPA's job was to count all of the flowers in town and keep a record of how they bloomed year-round. The goal was to ultimately promote a healthy and natural environment for flora to grow seasonally. Okay, that's so cool. Sometimes Aster got a little zealous in her pursuit, and that was how she had landed the most handsome man in Hyacinth at her side. She could remember vividly the way the man had shouted at her to get off his lawn like an elderly man with one of those moving pictures. But thanks to his distraction, she had left the wrong count on her sheet and needed to come back to Leon's house again to correct her mistake. That time, however, she was prepared for the man's harmless wrath.
It's only my flowers you trample on, right?
Well, only Leon's flowers.
You know what?
But he couldn't even feign frustration at her. Instead, the smile he had stayed the same as he leaned back using his free hand.
So, you must be really busy with work. It's the flower growing season after all.
It's the opposite, actually.
Her frown had returned as she looked down at her dress. Just the day before, she had sat in the BPA's monthly meeting, which usually was light-hearted conversation that had turned into a heavy plea for help.
What do you mean?
The number of flowers in Hyacinth has shown a 56% decrease since 3 years ago.
Holy crap.
Before the war started.
Yes, the pollution in the area has grown exponentially. The byproducts of metal and gunpowder processing.
Her voice trailed off as she grew more passionate about the ordeal. She clutched the bottom of her dress with her free hand. Cedar rested his hand on Aster's.
Go on, love. I'm listening.
Oh my god. This is so domestic and wholesome and... Oh my god. They are so cute. If he doesn't come back, I'm gonna lose it. Oh my god.
It's boring stuff, really.
Let him listen, Aster.
You don't seem to think so. Go on.
Are you sure you want to hear me prattle about my flowers?
You listen to me ramble on about mechanical things that I know doesn't interest you in the slightest.
Yes, but you get so excited talking about it, so it actually does interest me.
Aster, it's the same for him. Aster, it's the same for him. Aster, it's the same for him. He wants to see you excited.
My sentiment is the same, love. So, as I said,
Please, just go on.
Okay, well, I was saying that the war has produced so much pollution in the air that flowers are dying out. It's no place to sustain a thriving living environment. And I suppose people also stopped caring about keeping the environment clean when there are other things to focus on, like their safety and finances.
I imagine it's hard to import seeds with the port closed off as it has been.
That too. It's all so sad. People should be celebrating life and planting new seeds year-round to promote growth. Me and the other BPA members can only plant so much on our own, with no additional helping hands to water the plants. I'm afraid the number of flora is going to keep decreasing. Hyacinth used to be the city of imports and flowers. Now...
Stop.
Cedar shook his head left and right.
The city isn't quite dead yet. You're acting like it's on its last leg. I see buildings still upright, some people still out and about living out their days.
Girl has some serious OCD.
I suppose you're right. However, if we keep on this path, there will be no life left. Not in the flower beds or in the streets.
You would hate to see how it is today.
Well, it's a good thing the army is getting me then, isn't it?
Aster bit her lip in frustration.
A good thing? I can hardly agree with that, though my reasons are purely selfish.
Cedar squeezed his girlfriend's hands once more, and let out a sigh.
Someone needs to be the one to fight. Should I just let the enemy stomp all over our home? If me being on the front line means holding off the bad guys from getting to you, I'm okay with being drafted. So, I suppose my reasoning for accepting the idea is purely selfish too. Though, I guess we both want the same thing in the end.
Aster sat silently for a moment, the tension growing thick. Though Cedar intended to sound heroic and encouraging, his words made Aster's heart sink as if it was in quicksand. A suffocating feeling took over the thought of him putting himself in harm's way for her.
Are you sure we'll get our wishes?
Of course we will. Why wouldn't we? You're the one who said to me on the way here that I will come back, right?
He emphasized his words as he leaned into the girl. She could tell that his smile was hiding a lot of weight, but she didn't dare point it out.
Yes, I suppose, but...
Worrying will accomplish nothing, same as getting discouraged over the flowers. So, I have a little idea.
He straightened himself up.
Why don't we make a plan? While I'm serving our country and helping to end the war, you...
He pointed towards her with his He pointed towards her with his unoccupied hand.
Can work on getting those flower numbers back up. Then when I get back to Hyacinth, there will be beautiful flowers and even more beautiful lady waiting for me.
Aster mulled it over for a moment. It was a lovely idea. However, it was hard to focus on the possible positives of the situation that Cedar was trying to convince her of. All she saw was the loss of her love. The man made it sound so easy to keep living when the world around them was doing the opposite. How did he remain so positive? She decided she wouldn't rain on his parade. Aster would let him have this moment of joy, and perhaps, in feigned support, she could start to believe in the bright future that Cedar had pictured for them.
I will try my hardest.
That's all we can really do, right?
The two sat in silence for a few moments. Aster replayed Cedar's words in her mind. He believed in fighting to protect the people he cared about. It seemed like a noble pursuit, but certainly an avoidable one. People shouldn't have to be forced to fight for a decision they hadn't made themselves. This altercation between the nations of Anemoi and Gladiolus? This altercation between the nations of Anemoi and Gladiolus was over land and... This altercation between the nations of Anemoi and Gladiolus was over land the latter had wanted. Hyacinth was a port city, nestled between the two. A neutral state by nature, but that hardly seemed to be the case when able-bodied male citizens had to report to the mother city of Anemoi to fight. How could the nation remain neutral on paper, but still force its people to support a side? How could Aster lose Cedar to a technicality such as citizenship? Oof. How could he be expected to fight for a land he never even been to? How could any of this happen? How?
Penny for your thoughts, love?
I love the way he says that. His soft words broke the silence, and Aster was almost glad for it. The insurmountable pain was beginning to pile up on her heart. She realized that her happily ever after wasn't being impeded by something she had no control over. Sometimes love was not enough, no matter what pretty story Cedar wanted her to believe.
I am thinking of the unfairness of it all.
You can't think like that, or you'll drive yourself mad.
What else am I supposed to do, Cedar? Pretend it's not happening? Pretend you aren't leaving for who knows how long? You expect me to sit here idly and wait for you like a fair maiden, but I simply cannot.
Oh, honey. This is very relevant today. I did not know that coming in. So I'm sorry if you're having some feelings as well as me. She felt the hot tears grow at the corner of her eyes as she became overcome with emotions.
When you leave, I'll be tossing and turning in my bed, wondering how you are feeling. I will be the one anxiously waiting by the mailbox for a letter telling me of your safety. I will be walking the desolate streets on my own, searching for a purpose amid the chaos. Words used to mean something for me, but then I grew up, and I saw how cruel this world works. Promises, words of encouragement, and hope, they mean nothing to me now. Especially after our leaders said that this war is for our future. All it's doing is tearing us away from each other.
You're spitting facts, Aster.
That's why I have trouble believing what you're saying, Cedar. Because your words aren't enough to satiate my anxieties. By you simply telling me everything will be okay, am I supposed to magically stop worrying? I will never be able to stop thinking about you, no matter how much time has passed. Stop selling me false hope. This peace you're fighting for, we should have already had it. You're not the one looking to profit off another person's land, so why? Why you? Why us?
Whew. Snaps for you. The tears fell down from her eyes like a floodgate had been lifted. She hadn't the energy to hold back anymore.
Talking about my parents and my work, as if things will always remain the same. Nothing will ever be the same. People are dying, plants are dying, hopes and dreams are dying.
She snapped her head away from Cedar. Would he understand how she was feeling? She knew deep down, part of it must have bothered him too, but he kept smiling for her sake. Why pretend? The world was cruel, no matter how you looked at it. Perhaps she should have expected this outcome all along. The world was taking her mother, taking the flowers she had found so much joy in, and now her love. There would be nothing left.
You can't give up hope. Hope is our only weapon in a cruel world. If you give up hope, there truly isn't anything left to hold on to.
Better to be disappointed then?
No, love.
Cedar flinched when Aster disentangled her hand from his. It wasn't because of the want to withdraw from the man, but rather It was his positivity that she couldn't handle. Though she knew he truly believed in the best outcomes, it all felt like a lie. She was suffocated by the empty wishes and couldn't look past the unfair fate in front of her very eyes.
Then what, Cedar? Will you be able to tell me anything different than what I see?
I can tell you what's in my heart, Aster, because that's the only thing I'm sure of. I love you. In the depths of my heart, there is room for no one but you. Your smile lights up an entire area. Your hair, even when tied up after a long day of work, shines like stars in the galaxy. Your infectious laugh is always able to bring a smile to my face. Your honesty and openness are what inspire me to be the best version of myself that I can be. The sweet honey that leaves your lips is intoxicating, and I can't get enough.
Cedar, why are you like the best man ever?
So, I choose to believe in my hope, because the idea of losing you would be too much for me to bear. I refuse to believe in anything but our reunion in the perfect world we want to be in.
They're such a good match for each other.
For me, I do it for me, Aster.
Oh no, he's crying. There were now tears in his eyes as well. He didn't have to say it. Aster finally understood that Cedar was just as, if not more, frightened than she was. Holding on to the narrative he created of justice and chivalry was what made him able to cope with things. Living in the fantasy world of it was his escape, even if it wasn't hers. She respected him for that. Aster turned around and faced the man whose cheeks were reddened with emotion. She could hear footsteps shuffle by them as stragglers walked about, but the two didn't seem to care who saw them. Aster threw her arms around Cedar with enough force that his back almost touched the blanket. He propped himself up with one arm and used the other to hold Aster. He rubbed her back soothingly. His touch was subtle, almost like a tickle, but full of warmth she'd miss. A small sob escaped her lips and vibrated against Cedar's shoulders.
I'm sorry. Cedars are supposed to be resilient, aren't they? And here I am crying in my girlfriend's arms.
Oh. Pulling away only slightly to see Cedar's expression, a frown marring his usually relaxed face, and eyes were red and puffy. The tears stained his cheeks as they fell, one after the other.
You read the book I gave you.
When she and Cedar had first started dating, Aster had explained her name came from her mother's love of flowers and her father's sense of humor. A child living in Hyacinth should be named after a flower, he had always joked. And when she asked why he had been named after a tree, Cedar scoffed and explained that he didn't care enough to know. So she gave him a copy of the same book her mother had always kept in her personal library. It explained flower names, their meanings, and their symbolism throughout history. It was wishful thinking that he'd actually take a look at it, but knowing he had shown interest in something so dear to her made this moment harder. Her fingers dug into his back as another sob escaped her lips.
I knew it was important to you, but I had to save face, you know? Big bad Cedar, repelling the pests and protecting
His lips slowly turned upwards into a small smile.
his little Aster. Beautiful, otherworldly, and full of love, wisdom, and courage.
Oh my god! That's so sweet.
I don't feel very courageous right now.
It's okay.
Even the bravest people have emotions. Sharing them is what makes you courageous.
Oh my god. This is gonna tear my heart out. I already know. The two sat in each other's arms for what felt like an eternity to Aster. No more words had to be passed between the two. While the pain still loomed overhead, Aster relished in the security and vulnerability of Cedar's warmth, because it was the sensation, she was sure, that would help her try and hold on to his hope. Chapter 2. Look at the man. Look at him. He's such a cutie. And in touch with his emotions? Mwah! Beautiful. Cedar fidgeted with one of the buttons on the bottom of his shirt. In the other hand, he held a bag of takeout food tightly. He was nervous today. Why was he nervous? This wasn't the first time he had visited Aster's house. But it could certainly be the last. Don't you dare say that. Don't you dare say that, Cedar. He attempted to push that intrusive thought away. But no matter how hard he tried to put on a brave face, the idea lingered. Aster's passionate words and her tears from the day before, as they sat in each other's arms, had sparked something within Cedar. A fear that danced beneath the surface, despite the smile he had tried to plaster on his face. Today was different from yesterday. The air felt stale, and the sunlight that he had often relished in felt like it was a dull shade of yellow. Was it because war had changed Hyacinth, as Aster had pointed out? Or was it because it had finally dawned on him that today was his last day in town with the woman he loved and the life that he had come to know? It was almost as if an invisible force kept Cedar's arms pinned to his side as he fought to knock on the front door.
Don't show her you're nervous. You're supposed to be the tough one for her.
Aw, Cedar, he mumbled as his half-hearted pep talk to himself, but it did little to ease the tension. Eventually, he gave in and raised his right hand to knock on the front doorway. It felt like an eternity until someone finally opened the door. A frazzled Aster, as she patted her dress down furiously, gave him a grin when they locked eyes.
You're here!
Is everything alright? You look a little out of sorts.
He smiled nervously at the girl who had stuck out her bottom lip in a pout.
Is that how you should be greeting your girlfriend? By saying I'm looking out of sorts?
Yeah, Cedar.
I'm sorry. Where are my manners?
Aw, the wink. He bowed in an exaggerated fashion, and Aster giggled. When he straightened back up, she stepped closer and tugged at one of his suspender straps.
You're right. I am a little out of sorts. Mother knows you're coming and has since been putting up a fuss. It's quite tiring, actually.
Oh.
She doesn't want to see me?
Oh no, she does. Which is the problem, dear. She's absolutely giddy and has prepared her best stories. She doesn't get many visitors these days, so thank you for making this happen.
Cedar placed a tender kiss on Aster's forehead.
Of course. She's family. Same as you.
Oh, really? Weren't you the one making a big distinction about Leon being your half-brother? And now suddenly bloodlines don't matter?
She tried to hold back a snort, but Cedar could see a laugh spilling over. He had made a big deal over these things, mainly as a joke to the girl who seemed to clutch onto her familial bonds tightly. Aster had grown up in Hyacinth with a loving mother and father. Cedar didn't have that relationship with his parents. His biological father had gone overseas quite early in his life. Cedar hadn't known much about the man other than his name and a few staggering memories that's triggered in the most random scenarios. Like when he had been cooking breakfast one morning and the smell of tobacco from outside brought back a hidden memory of his father at the dinner table holding a cigar while Cedar's mother scolded him. Or the time Cedar was walking down the street and saw an older gentleman drinking from a brown paper bag in broad daylight. He recalled a similar image of his own father doing exactly what they were supposed to be getting at. Doing exactly that when they were supposed to be out getting groceries. With the way his father had found pleasure in all kinds of vices, it was no surprise to either Cedar or his mother when he had found out that Cedar had a half-sibling in Hyacinth. That revelation put an even bigger strain on the family's relationship. Now here he was with none left. All Cedar had was the support of his half-brother he had only just began to know a few years earlier. This was something he was sure Aster didn't grasp, but honestly, he was happy she hadn't experienced a tumultuous childhood like that. If anyone deserved to have a happy and loving upbringing, it was her. Oof! Cedar, you and I are birds of a feather.
Technicalities don't matter today.
Aster quirked an eyebrow.
Only today?
She mused, standing up on her tiptoes to reach closer to his height.
That's all you're getting from me.
He poked the side just to get... He'd poked the spot he'd just kissed moments ago with the index finger, and the two laughed.
Fine, fine. Enough teasing. Come on in.
Aw, her mother is so pretty. Aw, look at them. They're so cute. Also, I love the color palette for this entire game. It's absolutely gorgeous. After taking their shoes off of the door, Aster led Cedar upstairs to her mother's room, where the woman had just awoken from her short catnap.
Cedar, finally you are here, my boy.
She struggled to sit up, grunting as she pulled at the bedsheets beneath her.
Mother, please be careful.
Aster rushed to her side, slightly brushing up against Cedar as she had done so. His eyes were trained on the older woman, who, despite being bedridden for as long as he had known her, didn't look too worse for the wear. Though there were slight wrinkles on her face, the vibrancy in her eyes gave her a youthful glow that reminded him of Aster. However, he had come to know quite early that the two were nothing alike. Aster had no doubt gotten all her mild-tempered demeanor from her father. When her mother was sitting upright, Aster moved back to Cedar's side and pushed him gently towards the woman whose arm was pointed upwards toward him.
Mrs. Green, it's lovely to see you again. You
Always with the charming words.
Mrs. Green, it's lovely to see you again. You look as gorgeous as ever.
Always with the charming words. No wonder my daughter adores you so much.
The woman's grasp on him was weak, and the hug was short-lasting as she had pulled away and turned to cough. Perhaps she had underestimated how sick she really was. Cedar turned back to Aster and noticed the worried look on her face.
Mother, don't get too excited. Your caretaker said...
Oh, hush about the caretaker. I've got one foot in the grave anyway. Let me live my life as I choose.
Don't say that.
It's true. You need to face the facts,
Oh.
Aster. Nobody lives forever.
Cedar stepped back towards Aster's side and placed a comforting hand on her back. He could see how those words, today of all days, could sit heavily on her heart. He decided he'd be the one to lighten the mood and change the subject.
I brought some food for us from St. Clarice's near the port.
Seafood?
Her eyes lit up. She probably hadn't had takeout food in a while.
Yes, shrimp. Your favorite, right, Mrs. Green?
Wow, you remembered. I told you, honey. This boy's a good one. A true keeper.
And he'd better be coming back.
Yes, I agree with you, Mother. He's certainly special.
Actually, I'm the lucky one in this relationship to have not one, but two beautiful ladies in my life.
He's handsome, brings you food, cares about your mother. This one is husband material, Aster.
Husband?
Oh, I don't know how long they've been dating. Aster stammered, her eyes glowing slightly wide. Cedar admitted hearing the words was even a shock to him, but not as much as it was to Aster, who seemed like she wanted to flee from the scene. It certainly crossed his mind more than once that he'd like to be betrothed to Aster, but the young, naive girl wasn't ready for that big of a commitment yet, and he understood that. With how his near future would be, marriage was far from his mind at this point. Cedar placed the bag of food onto the desk, on the opposite side of the room from the bed, ready to change the subject again.
Who's hungry, ladies?
He began to unpack the takeout boxes, sliding over the massive pile of books on the table. He caught glimpses of some of them. There were a couple of romance novels, an old newspaper, and a few pamphlets of the town's natural flora. He wondered if they belonged to Aster when she had spent the morning hours with her mother.
No, we can't eat in here, Cedar. It's improper. We have to sit at the dining table.
Your mother is sick, Aster.
Nonsense, dear, with all your formalities. Live a little, will you?
Yeah, listen to your mom.
You know, eating in bed is a luxury in some places.
Aster's mother grinned.
See?
But Mother, the mess.
Can be cleaned up, can't it? You worry about too many things, Aster.
Her mother waved the words away each time Aster tried to protest it. Cedar couldn't help but chuckle watching the two. He'd certainly miss spending time with them.
I will even help clean up, so please.
He grabbed a container and a fork and handed them to Aster, who begrudgingly sat in the living chair next to her mother's bed. Cedar passed the shrimp bowl to Mrs. Green and took a seat with his food across from Aster. He watched the girl struggle with the container a bit until ultimately letting out a frustrated sigh.
Let me help you, love.
I can do it. I won't be bested by a silly container.
She looked up at him with a fire in her eyes that he knew had nothing to do with the food.
You certainly can, but a little help doesn't hurt.
We should be eating in the kitchen anyway.
Cedar recalled how Aster fussed over having the perfectly laid picnic yesterday. She had often been particular, but never this particular. He wondered if it was really her mother that had had her frazzled, or if it was the situation at hand. Probably a little of both.
This food is the best I've had in ages. Thank you, Cedar.
She spoke in between bites of food. Aster's mother was never the proper sort, but it didn't bother Cedar. He didn't find himself as much of the proper sort either.
You're welcome. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
We could stand for a little entertainment, however. Aster, be a dear and turn on the radio, would you?
Please just turn to the funnies. Please just turn to the funnies.
No, Mother. Cedar came all this way here. We should talk instead.
Can't do much speaking with our mouths full.
Mother, you're already...
Frustrated, Aster dropped her voice with a huff and turned her attention to her food.
No radio. You get all worked up about the news. I don't like it.
Excuse your poor old bedridden mother for wanting to hear about what's going on outside of these walls.
Nothing good is happening out there, Mother.
Aster snapped, food spilling from her plate as her body jumped with a start. Cedar watched as the two women grew more and more agitated with each other. He'd seen both of their points. Mrs. Green wanted a glimpse of the world, but for Aster, the world was a little too painful. This place was supposed to be her sanctuary away from it all, and he promised that he'd allow her that peace until he left. Then she'd have to work on finding a new peace herself. He cleared his throat, reaching over to place a comforting hand on his girlfriend's thigh.
Perhaps we could listen to some music instead.
Yes, I like that idea, Cedar.
Fine, fine. Whatever you'd like, you two.
Aster's mother had given in quite easily. This was probably a fight she had had with her daughter on more than one occasion. Letting the thoughts roll off her back, Mrs. Green went back to enjoying her shrimp. Placing his meal to the side, Cedar stood up and walked over to the table by the doorway where the radio sat. Quite cruel if you asked him, but he knew Aster had her reasons. Cedar turned the radio dial until a soft, soothing piano melody wafted into the room. This was the song he had never heard before, but it was lovely. The melody created a calm sensation that soothed the tension. He sat back down by Aster, his eyes shutting tightly.
See, Mother? This is quite nice.
I suppose, yes.
Cedar wished this moment between the three of them could last longer than the day. He would have loved to come visit Mrs. Green more. It seemed she really needed the company, and Aster needed the emotional break. He wondered if Aster would be alright to manage on her own with him gone. Normally, he had been her space to unwind, and with him so far away, he couldn't imagine what she'd focus her energy on.
Cedar, I have a question for you, dear.
Mrs. Green broke the reverie of their silence after a moment, sliding her empty food container onto the bedside table. Cedar's eyes fluttered open slightly as he offered a small smile. He could see Aster looking curiously on.
What is it?
Aster tells me this is your last day in Hyacinth. Is it true?
Cedar felt as if 100 bricks were suddenly piling onto his heart. Yes, it was true. But for a few moments, he had been able to hide that away. Things had almost felt normal, even if he couldn't push the melancholic feeling from his gut.
It is true, ma'am. I'm leaving tomorrow morning.
To join the troops?
Hesitantly, Cedar let out a breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. There was no use lying. Everyone knew about the government mandate.
Yes.
And when do you think you'll be back?
You could see Aster lean forward in her chair from the corner of his eye. This was a question she had asked him often, and he had always changed the subject. The truth of the matter was that it was uncertain, and he hated dealing with uncertainties when it came to Aster. Her mind had always seemed to wander, and if he could not quell those fears, he'd rather not be the reason to cause them.
I don't exactly know. I guess when the war is over?
From the sounds of it on the news, it doesn't seem like it'll be over anytime soon.
Mother, that is not a nice thing to say right now.
Are you intervening for Cedar's sake or your own, Aster?
Both? Mrs. Green asked the question aloud suddenly. Even the music in the room couldn't draw the silence between the mother and daughter as they stared at each other.
Surely Cedar already knows what he's getting into. Let's not paint him a pretty picture. He's going into a messy situation, no matter which way you look at it.
Yes, but Mother, you shouldn't scare him. It's his last day. We should be talking about happier things.
I don't bring it up to be callous. However, this may be the only time I can speak openly to Cedar, and I will not have pleasantries stand in the way. So please, Aster, let me finish. If I am making Cedar uncomfortable, he only has to say the word and I'll stop. But there is a reason I bring it up.
Aster looked to him for confirmation, a slight fear in her eyes. Cedar was afraid he wasn't going to give the answer she wanted at that moment. He placed a hand in his lap and folded them. A more serious and tense moment meant to hold back his nerves at the wild thoughts that had invaded his brain at the moment of Aster's mother wanting to talk to him about something.
Go ahead and speak freely, ma'am. I'd like to hear it.
Cedar.
Love, it'll be all right. I value what your mother has to say, and I won't live in regret to shield my feelings.
If that's what you want, I'm listening as well.
Aster straightened herself up to give off an air of confidence, but Cedar could practically feel the worry exuding from her body. He wanted to hold her in his arms and make the pain go away, but he knew from yesterday's experience that wouldn't work. Love, no matter how strong, could not save everything. There were things that would always stand in the way to test those feelings, and most could be overcome, but some challenges were insurmountable. They would get through it. He was holding on to that idea, though it was not going to be easy, and he doubted both of them would leave unscathed. He had only hoped that for Aster's sake it was him who had become damaged, because seeing her broken and defeated beyond repair would be his undoing. Mrs. Green cleared her throat before speaking again.
You are aware that leaving on this journey is not something to be taken lightly, correct?
Of course, ma'am. I'm well aware of that. But I'll be fighting for a greater good.
What she was getting at. What was she getting at exactly? Was this some kind of test?
The greater good. Yes, that's what they're selling you, young men. Will that greater good be worth my daughter's broken heart?
What?
Cedar stammered, eyes widening at the older woman's words. He couldn't bring himself to look at his girlfriend, who he was sure already had a broken heart.
She thinks I don't see her fret about the house. She checks to make sure her hair and her makeup are perfect for when she sees you. But the minute you're not in her presence, what do you think she does, Cedar? Do you think she goes to bed with a smile on her face? I hear her sob into her pillow at night. You haven't even left yet. Now, imagine when you're miles away and with no way to contact her.
Cedar dropped his words, because he didn't know what to say to the woman. She was right, and echoing the same sentiments that Aster had done only the day before.
It's not his fault he has to leave, Mother.
No, it's not his fault, or the fault of any young man. There are days when I thank the Lord for having a daughter, because if I had to see you leave before me, it'd be the strongest pain I would ever have to experience in my life. So, I understand your feelings, honey. I only want to ask Cedar that he be kind in his goodbye.
I wouldn't do anything else, ma'am.
Yes. I know you to be a wonderful young gentleman. I just want to make sure that you hug her tightly and you tell her how much you'll be thinking of her. Give her something to hold on to until you come back. And that's the biggest part, Cedar. You have to try your hardest to come back. I would like to see my daughter in a white dress and flowers in her hair. That would truly make me the happiest woman on earth.
Aster began to sniffle. She couldn't hold back her tears anymore. One after another, big sobs left her body.
Aster.
Cedar, can you give us some time to ourselves? I'd like to talk to my daughter about a few things.
Yes, of course.
Oh! With a feeling of numbness taking over his body, Cedar walked out of the room. He would pay anything to make Aster's pain go away. He'd sell his soul if he had to. To be losing her mother and him was a truly cruel fate. Cedar wondered, as he leaned against the closed door to Mrs. Green's room, if he'd be able to give Aster the best goodbye. He was afraid that even the most romantic moment wouldn't change a thing for Aster. She'd always be heartbroken that he was leaving her side. Though her cries were muffled, he heard her clearly as she sobbed to her mother.
Why, Mom? Why does he have to leave?
And that was the hardest thing for him to hear. As tears began to fall from his own eyes, yes, why? Why did he have to leave? Epilogue. Please tell me he comes back. Please tell me this is after the war, and he's coming back. Please. Aster watched the ships pull into port, and on another day she'd be excited the water was full of movement, but those ships were here to take Cedar away from her. No! God, please tell us we get to see him come back. Please. Please. There were a lot of people around her, but they were also here to see their loved ones leave. It was unfortunate that it took tragic circumstances to draw out the crowds this size. One day soon, she had hoped to see the same people gathered here with smiles waiting for their loved ones to return. How long would it be? Cedar had said until the war was over, but she knew he wasn't sure either. Everything felt like a roulette wheel was being spun. Was she going to get the big prize or lose it all? Aster's hand was placed on her heart and eyes. Aster placed a hand on her heart and shut her eyes tightly. The world was closing in on her. Today was the last day she'd see Cedar. Tomorrow he wouldn't be around, or the next day, or the day after that. The truth left her feeling empty and hollow, like a stranger to herself.
Ah, there you are, love.
Aster turned around slowly, hearing the familiar voice. Normally it was enough to pull her out of her bad moods, but today nothing could take that away from her, aside from the government official exclaiming the war was over, and no one had to leave Hyacinth to go and fight. Aster's eyes fluttered open slowly, seeing the man she loved with all her heart standing side by side with his brother. There were 2 suitcases in his hand, and another bag draped over his shoulder. Seeing her gaze on the bags, Leon offered a friendly chuckle. He was in good spirits, but perhaps he was holding it together for his brother's sake. If not for the moral obligation to Hyacinth, Leon, too, would be boarding the ship. His job as a healthcare worker was considered essential, and that he'd be better served his community. With Cedar being a mechanic, they must have assumed his experience would help in the army.
I told him he didn't need all that.
Well, my lovely girlfriend taught me to always be prepared, so I may have overpacked.
Yes, it's good to make sure you have everything you need, especially when you're going to be so far from home.
She offered as best of a smile as she could muster, but both boys could see through it. Leon offered his own reassuring smile, but it changed nothing. There was an overwhelming sense of dread that had made itself at home in her stomach.
How long could a war last anyway? I'll be home in no time.
Cedar winked at Aster and gave her a magnificent smile, suitable for a superhero in one of those comic strips in the newspaper. In a way, he was being a hero for his country, but a villain to her heart. She knew it was unintentional, but the fact didn't ease any of her pain.
Right, no time.
She repeated the words to herself, but it felt foreign and empty. The trio all knew that wasn't the case. War was brutal, and Cedar would be gone for at least several years. Letting out a heavy sigh, Cedar placed the bag he had been wearing over his torso onto the floor by his other luggage.
Leon, would you, give us a second to chat? I want to give my girlfriend a proper goodbye.
Leon looked at the pair, from his brother to Aster, a pitiful smile faltering.
Sure. I'll be just over there.
Leon pointed to a nearby bench that had a singular empty seat. Cedar nodded and waved the man off carelessly. She was sure the 2 must have had their heart-to-heart at home before they left. Aster could only watch Leon walk away from them. She hadn't the energy for all the formalities. She'd have to apologize to him later for not greeting him when he approached.
My mother's words got to you, huh?
She tried her hardest to fight back the tears at Cedar's statement. What she loved most about him was he was thoughtful, and he always listened.
Whoa, no. I wasn't planning on a regular goodbye. But yes, your mother's words certainly helped. So, I decided I wanted you to have something to remember me by.
What is it?
Please, do not say that. Remember means you don't plan on coming back.
Poor choice of words. I'm sorry. What I meant was that I wanted to give you a goodbye that would make you smile instead of frown. So, you can remind yourself how much I love you and how I am fighting to get back home to you. I know you don't believe there's happiness to come from this moment, but I'm sure there is somewhere.
It's even a stretch for you.
Things are only grim if you make them grim.
There he was, trying his hardest to be the strong one for both of them. But she had seen him in tears. She had seen him with tears in his eyes this weekend, same as her. He was hurting too.
You know, maybe I'll have tons of stories to share with you, and a list of places we can visit together, because I am coming back. I made a promise to your mother, and I am no liar.
It's not up to you. You can have the intent to come back, but the world may have a different story written up for you.
As I said a few days ago, love, worrying will only drive you mad. You should focus on something else, like how much I truly adore you. I won't be thinking of anyone but you while I'm on that ship.
She couldn't find the words to say to the man's attempt at lightening the mood. He ran a hand through his unkempt hair, Getting a closer look at him, she noticed slight bags under his eyes. Had he been up all night, too?
Oh, come on. Please, line up. I can't get on that ship with you looking so sad.
Then don't get on. Stay here with me.
She cried out suddenly, grabbing his hands and giving them a tight squeeze.
You know I can't do that, love.
It's not fair.
No, but we can't let life win. We gotta show it how strong of a team we are. Cedar and Aster.
He pulled her close to him so their bodies were touching. He placed a tender kiss on her head. The two stayed like that, swaying in the wind for a few moments, until finally he spoke into her hair with a laugh.
I got you something to remind you of our amazing partnership.
You did?
Cedar pulled away slightly and wiped away a stray tear from Aster's cheek.
Yes, I want you to hold on to it when you feel lonely.
Cedar fished in his pockets for something as Aster tried wiping her tears, though they kept falling like a city stream. She eventually resorted to holding her breath, imagining as he thought he could make up for not having him here by his side. After a moment of struggling, he pulled out a small wooden pendant. It was rough around the edges and poorly painted, but it was unmistakable what it was.
A tree?
Not just any tree. A cedar tree. The branches look like that, right?
He pointed to a spot on the pendant that had small lines drawn on.
I tried my best to make it as accurate as possible.
You made this?
Aster cried out. It was adorable. And that made the moment even more painful. Perhaps if he had simply given her a kiss on the cheek and walked on the ship, it would have been easier to let him go. No, that wasn't how that worked. Cedar wasn't someone she'd be able to forget quite easily, even if he had given the worst goodbye imaginable.
Yeah, I stayed up all night doing it. Leon had some supplies he let me borrow, and I, used the book you gave me to see what a cedar tree looked like. I'm not an artist, so...
His face grew red with embarrassment as he kept tripping over his words. Aster couldn't help but giggle. This certainly was a thoughtful gift that would remind her of him.
It's beautiful. I can't believe you did this for me. It's perfect.
Well, there's more. See this part right here?
He pointed to a spot that looked as if a piece had broken off and Cedar hadn't sanded it to be a smooth edge.
The cedar tree has a pear.
Cedar held up a pink flower he had been holding on to tightly in his hand. She didn't have to guess what it was. An Aster. Oh my god. Oh.
The flower connects to the tree because I want us to grow together.
Oh my god.
Cedar, that is so thoughtful.
She couldn't believe that on his last night at home, he had given up hours sleeping in his comfy bed to make him and her matching pendants that they could hold on to as memories of each other.
When you need some strength or some big bad cedar to scare the scary thoughts from your head, I'll be here in spirit. And when I want to remind myself of your love and be more courageous, I'll look to my Aster.
You really surprise me sometimes. You know that?
Had the tears not already been falling from her eyes, Aster was sure they would have come down now.
I love you, Aster. Those aren't just some pretty words to make the goodbye easier. Every single minute we've spent together has made me a better person, and I'm grateful to have gotten a chance to get to know you. I know it sounds dramatic, and before you say it sounds like a final goodbye, I just need you to know how much you mean to me. You will always be on my mind.
I love you too, Cedar. With all of my heart and then some. Meeting you has been one of the most exciting and fulfilling adventures I've ever been on. So please make sure you make it back home in one piece so we can make some more memories together.
Oh my god. Oh my god, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. She threw herself into Cedar's arms, and he held her tightly. Two of them bonded together like a key in a lock. This moment wasn't going to change the inevitable, but being able to enjoy each other's warmth for just a little longer would keep them pushing for a better future together.
Don't cry. There's nothing to worry about, love. I'll be back before you know it, and in better shape than when I left. I promise.
And you never break your promises?
Never. Besides, I wouldn't be able to leave your smile for too long.
I won't be able to smile much without you around.
There are things in this world that are wonderful and beautiful that you will be able to enjoy without me by your side.
Oh, it's the pendants. Oh my god.
So, see everything you want to see and love the way you do best. I want to hear about all these memories when I get back. So, now it's your turn to promise me. Promise me that you'll live your life, Aster.
I promise.
And though Aster said it, with all the courage she could muster, her words felt impossibly heavy. She let the wind carry them away, in hopes of them finding their way back to her when she needed them most. Letters unlocked. We get letters? They better say in one of those letters that he's coming back. Dear Cedar, I promised that I'd keep on living my life without you, and though it's been hard, I've really tried my best. Mother suggested I write down all my adventures so that I have something tangible to share with you when you return. I've rewritten this first one so many times, trying to cite some grandiose, life-changing adventures. But I don't have any stories like that to tell. Life without you is as unremarkable as you can imagine. What happened today isn't far out of the ordinary. I simply went to your home to count the flowers, as you would call it. I gave my regards to Leon while I was there. He seems well, although he's been working exceptionally hard lately. I suppose now that so many of our young men are away fighting on the faraway shores, it's left to the rest of us to hold the fort until your return. I didn't think it was possible, but Hyacinth feels even more empty than before. There are no ships anymore, not even the occasional import freight. The local wildlife continues to decline. While pollution is ever on the rise, it's quieter now, and much less vibrant, as though those ships carrying you away took all the colors with them. It's hard to feel good on most days, especially with the local flora diminishing so rapidly. But I always try to remember what you told me before you left. I remember our deal for you to fight to protect us, and for me to nurture the gardens here. Oh, thank you, sweetie. Come here. Come on up. Come on up. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Come back. Thank you, sweetie. So you have a beautiful home to return to. For every flower I count, I think of you. I picture the look on your face as you return to the town to see... Percy. I picture the look on your face as you return to see the town you love bursting with blooms, as though the gardens themselves are welcoming you home. Thinking of you helps me stay focused, but it also proves to be somewhat of a distraction. I couldn't help but hear your voice again, telling me to piss off and stop trampling your lawn, just as you shouted at me when we first met, like a grumpy old man yelling at a naughty child. I still chuckle to myself when I remember how you refused to believe that my weird obsession with counting flowers was a real job. I can't imagine what you must have thought of me. Although I can't say my first impression of you was any more positive, as rude as you were. To think such a confrontational first encounter led to the love of a lifetime. Despite your teasing, I felt a spark when we first met that I'd never felt before. I never told you this, but you were right all along. I was secretly pleased when I realized I had made a mistake in the numbers and would need to return to recount. I feel the same flutter in my chest as I think of seeing you again. Cedar, I am proud of you for fighting for your ideals and for our future, but please, once your job is done and the war is over, come home to me. I miss you. Yours always, Aster. Dear Cedar. Oh no, did she not get a letter back? Okay. I check the mail every day, awaiting news of you when no such letter has arrived. I know you're occupied with the war, but anything to reassure me of your well-being would mean the world to me while I wait for you. I'm trying to continue living life to the fullest, but each day feels empty with your absence. I'm sorry. I promised Mother I would stay positive. She must be worried about me. We were meant to eat lunch together today, and I must confess, I was somewhat preoccupied in my longing for you when I went to greet her. She took one look at my face and practically ordered me out at the door, insisting that I finally make good on my promise to you and do something memorable to tell you about in my letters. But I could see she only meant to encourage me. Without thinking, my feet carried me to the port. The weather was beautiful today, and the way the sunlight danced across the water was breathtaking. It reminded me of the day you so offhandedly asked me on a date. Our first date, no less. You presented the question so casually I almost thought I misheard you. And yet, once I realized what you were asking me, I could not contain my excitement. I still smile when I recall how surprised you were at such a genuine response, considering the teasing I endured with you. I do not blame you for expecting a more flustered, dismissive response, but in that moment I was overwhelmed with a sweet, giddy feeling. Even just the memories of that day caused my heart to flutter, and so today I returned to the cafe where we ate on that day to try and relive that moment. I even took a seat at the same table, the one outside with a view that allowed us to watch the ships come and go while we dined together. But this time the sea was empty as the seat across from me. No longer the port bustling with activity, nor the town. Everything in Hyacinth feels like a shell of itself, and I wonder if it will ever seem as vibrant as it did when we could enjoy it together. Though I wanted to stay longer, the reality of my situation was too harsh to bear. I finished my meal and returned home to Mother. I didn't want her to worry, not with the condition the way it is. So I did what I always do when I need your strength. I clasped my hand around the pendant you gave me, and remembered your warm eyes and sweet smile when I told you a prettier version of my lunch, and how I would write about it for you tonight. She seemed relieved to hear I'm still writing you these letters. I suppose she hopes that one day you'll indeed write back. Mother still holds out hope I will too. Cedar. I know you have other concerns right now, but I know how much she means to you, so I will be direct. Her health is not getting better. I'm doing all I can to care for her, so we may both see you again. But I worry if you do not return soon, there may be nothing I can do to ensure your two's reunion. I will continue to wish for this war to end quickly and check for letters every day until I hear from you once more. I miss you more than words can say, my love. Yours always, Aster. Ooh, letter 3. So, how much we want to bet her mom died? The weather has gotten colder in Hyacinth, even colder than the last year, or the year before. The trees have lost all but a few remaining leaves, and the flowers have gone dormant, taking the last of the town's color with them. This morning I awoke shivering my bed, even with an extra blanket. This new house Father and I moved into feels cold and sterile. I do not like the ugly maroon color of the wall or the aged wooden floors. However, Father wanted to live somewhere that didn't remind him of Mother. So the only choice was this gaudy old-fashioned home that belonged to a family that had long left Hyacinth. There were other much prettier buildings for sale, but Father's taste for bright colors has long disappeared. Do you remember the old cottage on the outskirts of town? We passed by it on one of our walks some time ago. We were smiling and laughing together, but just the sight of the pretty little building caused us to stop in our tracks as we did back then. Something about that house spoke to both of us, and even joked one day we could buy it and live there together. Our love was so new at the time that your suggestion to move in together flustered me, but even then, the idea of living with you made my heart soar. However, on nights like tonight, I often think about what it'd be like to live with you there as husband and wife. I often lay in bed thinking about the way you teased me about spending the night so you could wake up next to me in the morning instead of an empty bed. I regret never having known your warmth. If I had, then perhaps I could remember it on these frostbitten mornings, and that would drive the cold away, as a resilient cedar might drive away the pests. Though I have nothing tangible to hold on to, I like to imagine what it might have been like, or even what it could be like upon your return. As I lay here, I picture you next to me with tousled hair and a sweet, sleepy smile. I know you would tease me, perhaps insisting that I snore, when I certainly do not. Yet I can think of nothing more blissful than waking up beside you every morning for the rest of our lives, and never feeling this lonely chill again. Perhaps one day when you return we can buy that cottage. I'll plant a big cedar in the front yard, with a garden full of asters not too far from it. We could build an addition to the property so that Father could stay with us too. I think if Mother were still here, she'd like that as well. Though it has been several years since I've last heard from you, Leon assures me if you were harmed, we'd know about it by now. Years? It's been years? So I hold on to that tiny thread of hope, because I cannot live my life knowing I will never see you again. I fear I will be in the same state as Father, an empty garden, where the soil is too infertile to grow even the hardiest of plants. Please come home, Cedar, I miss you. Yours always, Aster. We don't even get to know? What? We don't even get to know? Yeah, Percy. Come here. We don't even get to know, Percy. We don't even get to know if he's okay. It's been years. You don't even care. You don't even care. You just want pets. Oh my god. So I was right about it, like, ripping out my heart and trampling on it. On Valentine's Day, of all days. Wow. Well then, Boy, that was a turn. That was not what I was expecting. And we don't even get to know if he's alive, or if they get the cottage, or if they get married. Oh, that's so sad. I don't think I could come up with, and I don't think I have to, but come up with like a life lesson or a love lesson or whatever. But that hit really close to home. Wasn't expecting that. Crazy. Crazy. Anyway, I will see you tomorrow for the last day of Love Week. I've honestly had a blast so far, and I hope you're enjoying it. Some of these games have been decently long, but I think they've been pretty good. But I will see you in the next one, my loves. Bye.